Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Today I wanted to remind myself and you of the danger of stoking up or encouraging any kind of fitnah. And I will explain what fitnah is in the lecture. First of all, Allah said in the Quran, and fear a fitnah, a trial or punishment, which will not only strike those among you who have done injustice, and know that Allah is severe in punishment. Shaykh Sa'di rahimahullah said in his tafsir about this ayah, the fitna will afflict the one or the ones who did wrong and others as well. That happens when injustice appears among the people and no attempts are made to change or remove it. In that case, it will strike those who did it and others. Protection against such situation is to forbid all munkar, evil, as much as possible, and to restrain the people of sin and transgression, so as not to allow them to engage in sins and injustice as much as it is humanly possible. And Allah is severe in punishment to those who bring upon themselves His anger and do not try to please Him. End of quote. Allah also said, indeed, those who put the believing men and women through fitnah, some kind of trial, and then have not repented, will have the punishment of hell, and they will have the punishment of the burning fire. Also in the Quran, Allah said, indeed, those who like that immorality and bad sins should spread among the believers will have a painful punishment in this world and the hereafter. And Allah knows and you do not know. Stoking up fitna and disagreement among the Muslims is generally the characteristic of the enemies of Islam, from among the disbelievers and hypocrites, who do not want any good to come to the believers, nor do they wish them to be good brothers to one another. Or it is done by people with good intentions, but with wrong methods. That is why Allah told us to resolve our differences in a correct manner when He said, O you who have believed, obey Allah, obey the Messenger, and those in authority over you from among yourselves. And if you disagree over anything, refer it to Allah and the Messenger if you believe in Allah and the last day. That is the best way, and it is best in relation to a correct result. Allah also said, but know by your Lord they will not truly believe until they make you, O Muhammad, judge concerning that over which they dispute among themselves, and then find within themselves no discomfort from what you have judged, and submit in full willing submission. Shaykh Sa'di rahimahullah said in his tafsir about this ayah, Allah the Most High gave an oath by Himself that they will not attain real faith until they make His Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam a judge in what they differ among themselves, i.e. in every issue there is a difference between them. Unlike the issues of consensus, since those are supported by the Quran and the Sunnah. But just making the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam a judge between themselves is not enough until any discomfort and dislike towards his judgments disappear from their hearts and they totally trust his judgment. But even that is not sufficient until they fully submit to his ruling with an open heart and peace of mind, as well as comply with it in letter and spirit, with body and soul. Referring to him for judgment makes the person a true Muslim. Not opposing his judgment makes him a true believer. And submitting to it with full submission makes him a muhsin, a good doer of the highest degree. So whoever completes and perfects these three levels has completed all of the important levels of the religion. And whoever turns away from making the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam a judge in the matters of difference, believing it not to be obligatory, then he becomes a kafir, a disbeliever. And whoever leaves it believing it to be obligatory, then he becomes a fasiq, a disobedient person. End of quote. And in the Sunnah, dear brothers and sisters, there are many ahadith about fitnah. Since Allah wants us to unite upon His way and not to be disunited, whether it is between friends, husband and wife, relatives, Muslims in general, especially in da'wah, in calling to the way of Islam and Sunnah. So I will quote only some of the hadith. Like I said, fitna can occur between relatives, friends, husband and wife, and it can even occur in society in general, which is of course much more serious. The Prophet ﷺ used to seek refuge with Allah and taught us to do the same in every prayer, from the fitna of the grave and its punishment, from the fitna of Dajjal, the Antichrist, from the fitna of the life of this world and death, and from the fitna of being in debt and sins, or places and times of sin. In every prayer, obligatory or otherwise, which shows the importance of this dua. Also, Allah taught the Prophet ﷺ to say in the prayer, and in it, in the long hadith, and when you want some fitna to happen to your slaves, then take me unto you before I fall into that fitna. This is an authentic hadith narrated by Imam Tirmidhi and others. Also in some other hadith, the fitna of a Muslim in relation to his family, wealth or neighbors is removed through prayers, fasting, charity, and enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. So any fitna generally stems from some kind of disagreement between people over something, whatever that may be. So it's important to know and apply the following. To know the hierarchy in Islam, written and unwritten. In the family, which shows that the husband is in charge. In the mosque, where there is an imam, a committee, for example, a chairman. In Muslim countries, we have departments of Islamic affairs. In the organization, between the brothers, for example, someone is older, more knowledgeable in the religion, and so on, more experienced. To the extent of a minister or even head of state, if it's applicable. So all of this must be respected and borne in mind, and we must not behave as if we are all equals. We must control what we say, how we say it, our expression of the face, body language, the tone of our voice. For example, with our parents, even if they are not Muslims, or are Muslims opposed to our views and way of life, we are not allowed to speak in a way that is disrespectful to them. We are not even allowed to show any signs of not being satisfied with what they say or do. Even if inside we may be like that, but we're not allowed to show it, not to upset them. Allah said in the Quran, "And call to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good preaching, and argue with them in the best manner." So we must understand and apply this beautiful ayah. The second point is to realize that much, if not all, of what we argue about is not based on irrefutable proofs from the Quran and Sunnah, or the consensus of the Salaf, pious predecessors, or the consensus of the scholars of Islam, but rather it is based on opinions, ours and someone else's. That means that there is a possibility that we can be wrong, and that often is the case. Thirdly, even if we have an ayah of the Quran, or a hadith from the Sunnah, or an opinion of a scholar, or what we think to be a consensus, then our brother or brothers with whom we have a disagreement most probably are in the same position. And we must respect that. We must not speak without knowledge, and I mean the religion. We must not cause divisions and problems by calling to and advocating from among other things. For example, shirk, equating someone to Allah, haram, forbidden things, or bid'ah, religious innovations. Because all of these, they split the Muslim nation. The next point is reconciling people is a very good idea and a very good deed, and Allah rewards it hugely and He loves it. We must purify our intentions before and especially during the argument. And generally in our life, we must purify our intentions. We must not do things for our personal gain, to promote ourselves, our name, our position, and things like this, which unfortunately very often it looks like people are trying to do. If at all possible, we must try and reconcile between ourselves, solve our differences, make concessions for the sake of Allah, and avoid any arguments. In many ahadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, I guarantee the middle of Jannah, paradise or heaven, to those who abandon arguments even when they are right, or even if they are right. Very often it can be an obligation to stop arguing so that we avoid undesirable consequences. Look at what happened when Musa alayhi salam was asked to intervene in an argument. He accidentally killed a man, which wasn't his fault, and he repented from it and Allah forgave him. The son of Noah alayhi salam, argued with his father and perished. Because of some people arguing, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam forgot the exact date of Laylatul Qadr, the night of decree or power. Because of some disagreements, the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam nearly got divorced from him and were severely reprimanded by Allah. Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah used to say, I never argued with anyone and wished that he made a mistake. Meaning that he wished that the truth was on the side of his opponent, so he would just follow it. And that's how we must try to be. We must ask ourselves, why am I arguing? What am I trying to prove? Is this argument necessary? The next point is, if our opinion on some issue is not accepted, it does not mean that we must become enemies. The brotherhood of Islam must remain and remains as long as we are upon Islam and the Sunnah. Also, we must have knowledge on the issue we are discussing. If not, we must be quiet and not make any waves to just make a name for ourselves. Other people know better, and we just should get over it. If we are in charge of something, we must be prepared for some criticism, and we must be patient and not get angry at the slightest opportunity. Like for example an imam, and as you know, the mosque is attended by all kinds of people, some clever and intelligent, but most are not very intelligent. If someone is head of da'wah, he must also be prepared for that. If someone is a committee member or a chairman or a husband even and father, that's very important to know that. We must not be like a person who does not do anything to help but constantly criticizes those who do something. If you can't do what they are doing, then help them with what you can. Give them advice if necessary in a polite and kind manner, or at least get out of the way. It is easy to destroy what people are building, but it is very difficult to build something yourself. So if in doubt, leave it out. Also, dear brothers and sisters, we must all know our own position and limitations and not try to be someone we are not. Look after your own affairs and responsibilities first, and everything will be okay. If you are not sure, ask the scholars. Do not be the helper of shaitan against the friends of Allah. Also, think about the consequences of your actions. Can it lead, for example, to divorce in the family? Can it lead to enmity? Can it lead to spoiled relations? Or even destruction of the team or the group? Or bad image of Muslims, which is bad enough? Or bad image of brothers with beards or sisters with hijab? Or the bad image of the people of the Sunnah. Maybe it can lead to some kind of a big fine, or even jail or deportation, being away from friends or family, or closing down of a mosque or Islamic center, spoiled da'wah, and worst of all, the anger of Allah and His punishment. And punishment does not mean only punishment in the hellfire, it can mean punishment in this world. And worse than losing your job, money, family or anything is being punished in your religion. I've seen people who've engaged in fitnah constantly, and after a long time being students of Islamic knowledge, they shaved their beards, a'udhu billah, may Allah protect us from that. Some people removing their hijabs. This is the worst kind of punishment before hereafter, because it pertains to your religion. Or not seeing the truth, or going away from the path. All this is severe punishment in this world. So we must say to ourselves, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I went too far, maybe I said something that I shouldn't have said, maybe I offended my brother or brothers, and of course all of what I'm saying applies to sisters. So maybe a sister offended her sisters. We must not be proud and arrogant not to acknowledge this. So this leads me to the next point, which is we must learn to apologize to people. It solves lots of problems in our life. It comes from humility and acknowledging one's mistakes and guilt, as well as from wisdom and strength of character. And seek the advice of those who have knowledge, and they are older than you, who have lots of experience, as well as wisdom and intelligence. Then you will hardly make any mistakes, believe me. Allah has ordered even His Prophet ﷺ to seek the advice of his companions, even though he was the best of mankind. And who are we compared to him ﷺ? However, if you've tried everything in your power and nothing's working, and there's a real threat of serious harm or damage, then first of all we must try and resolve it between ourselves by involving scholars, Islamic personalities, influential people from among our community. Then the scholars say if it doesn't work, in such cases it's permissible to seek the help of external government organizations. Like I said, if there is a real threat of serious harm or damage, even physical, because one of the reasons I decided to make this reminder is because people have brought to my attention terrible things. And it happened to myself as well in the course of da'wah many times, where people threaten you or they want to do things, and sometimes even they physically fight in the masjid or in an Islamic center. So in such rare cases where the people are not prepared to accept that they are wrong or leave their activities, it is allowed to seek the help of external government agencies and organizations up to the police, even in a non-Muslim country, as it is a necessity, and we cannot resolve the issue ourselves, and we cannot allow these people to spoil everything that we are building and doing for the community and for other people. For this not to happen, We must follow the sunnah correctly and be vigilant not to allow people to spread haram, bad manners, and especially bid'ah, which means that we must be polite, but it doesn't mean that we must be fools, allowing everyone who is maybe even a criminal, doesn't care, he's trying to hide behind slogans like Islam, Da'wah, Sunnah, and things like this. Finally, but this is one of the most important points, we must constantly do dua for Allah to help us, to forgive us, to reconcile us, and to remove differences amongst ourselves and hatred between us. We must be self-critical, which means that we must look at our actions and words and not think ourselves to be the best. This is one of the traps of shaitan and very dangerous. We must admit when we are wrong. We must correct it and thank the people if they bring it to our attention and move on. Doesn't mean we stop everything we are doing. No. Even if it's between husband and wife, relatives and so on, your wife may not know everything that is necessary in terms of da'wah, in terms of knowledge of Islam, in terms of even the benefits of the family. Your relatives are the same. Some people who advise you may not be in the same position as you are. And so we must move on. If they are good people, they will accept. If they are not, we don't really care what they say. So life is too short, dear brothers and sisters, for us to waste it on such things. Why? Because we don't know how long we will live. We don't know when we will die. And even if we die, we'll continue our work. Look at great scholars of Islam. A lot of their work never got continued. So we should not, even if we are small people, it doesn't mean we should allow people in our hearts. We must hate. We can talk about fitnah a lot because we have special chapters dedicated to it in many books of hadith and fiqh. But we don't have enough time in this short video, so I just wanted to remind myself and you, because it was brought to my attention of a lot of fitnah happening all over the world, but especially in non-Muslim countries where the Muslim brothers and sisters are in minority. As you know, they have very few resources. Their efforts are, you can say, very, very strongly opposed, often by non-Muslims. And some Muslims come and try to stoke up and make some fitnah. Some people encourage it, some people discourage it. So we must know that fitnah is not allowed to be done. Disagreements must be eliminated. We must know to keep quiet or to not proceed with our arguments, with our behavior and so on and so forth. We must learn to control ourselves. That applies to the family environment. That applies to any environment where we come into contact with people. So do not allow shaitan to deceive you that what you are saying is the best and so on. Always ask the scholars, the ulama. You don't know Arabic, people now can translate for you. So don't worry about that. Jazakumullah khaira for your patience. May Allah reward you. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.